Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to this, a special Village and Valley News. I'm here today along with John McPherson, the master winemaker here at South Coast Winery in beautiful wine country, Temecula, California. This is one of the most popular destinations for wine enthusiasts. There's a beautiful spa here and hotel, and John has been here working for the winery as a master winemaker for 2 decades now. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation today, John, because for those who aren't familiar with a master winemaker, I'd like for you to explain firstly what that is and what you do on a daily basis.
Well, you know, I think really as titles go, it was bestowed upon me because I came in as the senior winemaker, and the other winemaker that works with me, Javier Flores, he and I have been a team really together since 1989. We've been working together, and we had a stint at another winery here in the valley. And you know, for myself, I moved here from Texas back in 1985, and have been in the business prior to that. You know, and this is actually going to be my 48th harvest this year. So I've seen a lot, done a lot, and when it comes down to production, I think you can talk about any style of wine, any type of wine, whether it's, you know, a red table wine, a white table wine, rosé, sparkling. We do it all. Fortified wines, we're capable, and you know, we do make all of these types of wines. So I think, you know, as a term or a moniker goes, as being capable as a master winemaker, you know, you kind of have a lot of different things under your belt that you can do and handle different, you know, winemaking styles, whether it's barrel fermented or tank aged or what have you. There's all kinds of things that kind of go into it. So we were looking for an assistant winemaker, and Javier and his wife came by that particular day that we had made a decision, and we were really just in the process of starting to look, and he really was all-encompassing kind of individual. He had grown up in the Mexican wine industry down in Baja. He'd worked for LA Cheto down there, and had a great, you know, background, and was very knowledgeable, and was really just kind of the perfect individual. And you know, I think it's something that for people who don't know Temecula or this region, it becomes something that, especially for myself, having moved here from Texas, I really didn't realize, you know, how big California was and what all of the wine appellations really were. So, you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to be moving out to California, going to be in the wine business. And it wasn't till I got here that I realized, well, Southern California is much different than the Central Coast or even Northern California, like from Napa, Sonoma. I mean, it's a big state, obviously, but you know, the perception of the wine industry is very varied, and it tends to be very Appalachian kind of snobbery when you get into, oh, it's, you know, Napa and Sonoma are the pinnacle, but as you kind of drift south, it falls off the map a bit. But I felt that this was really a frontier, if you will, as far as wine, because it was a very young appellation in many respects, although compared to when it was really established by the Spanish back in the mission days, it's a very old wine region. And of course, Cucamonga to the north of us was one of the largest grape growing regions in the United States back at the turn of the century. So a lot of history here, but I think that, you know, as far as Javi and I, we got along great, and it was just been a fun relationship working together because we both have a real passion for wine.
Yeah, and now let's talk about that passion. So when did that develop? Obviously back in Texas for you. So were your family involved in the business? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that both Javi and I were growing up in the industry. His father worked for Cheto, and he had several brothers who did. And for myself, my father was a chemistry professor at Texas Tech University, and he was very interested in wine chemistry. I mean, wine is a very dynamic fluid, and when you get into the chemistry aspects of it, there's a lot of things going on, and my father was really into that sort of research of what was going on with how it's produced and all the changes that occur from the juice stage to the wine stage. And so kind of growing up with that type of mentor in my life, and Javi had the same thing with his father. and we both just had, a family affair with it. And growing up in the business, really, I think, puts you at the heart of it when you get into what it's about, because it is so much more than just making it. It's how it does influence your lifestyle and how it influences things around you in respect to how you enjoy food, how you perceive life, and want to socialize and share a great experience like a glass of wine with others.
Yeah, no, it's very, very fascinating to me. Also, you mentioned there about your education with your dad. I mean, that was a great education. But if you were to go the conventional route, if someone were to follow in your footsteps, what would your advice be to them in terms of education?
Well, I think that chemistry is very much a big part of it, and my father was key in my life in that respect, because I did appreciate chemistry, and that I have a degree in chemistry, but my major in college was food science.
Okay.
So I learned a lot about fruit and vegetable processing, anything from cheese making to slaughtering cattle and meat production. I mean, it was a very all-encompassing sort of major.
Yeah.
And many aspects of food technology all are centered on chemistry. So my second degree in chemistry was something that really helped me have a great handle on what I was going to do in wine. I realized early on that I wanted to be in wine production, and I really came out to California to get into sparkling wine. The idea was I'd learn sparkling wine production. I was going to go back to Texas and be something there doing sparkling wines in Texas. But the economy in the mid '80s really went in the tank, and the fact that I had a job out here in California. My dad said, you might ought to stay where you're at, because you got a good job and things are, really not too shiny back here at this point in Texas. So anyway, longer I stayed, the harder it was to leave. My wife and I really got settled in and found, Southern California is a nice fantasy land as far as living arrangements. So maybe, it's a little bit more difficult today, I think, expense-wise, but when we came in, it was, a lot more affordable, but we certainly embraced this this great weather and everything that we have here.
Yeah, it is. It's wonderful weather. You've got a beautiful land out here. It's stunning. For those of you who have not visited South Coast Winery, I encourage you to do so. It's absolutely stunning. But explain to us what entails, like, day to day for you. What does that look like as a master winemaker?
Well, probably, like, for me right now, we're heading into harvest, and this is probably the time of year that it's like everything starts over. It's all about beginning anew again, because we have a new harvest. So right now we're getting ready for a harvest. We're wrapping up last bottlings of things we have in tank, and wanting to have all of the tanks and barrels that we need ready for the new wines coming in. We want all of those empty and clean and ready to go. So we're prepared for receiving fruit. We're right now doing a lot of vineyard reconnaissance, if you will. We're out there planting clusters and trying to understand how much quantity, what kind of quality we're going to have, how many tons of grapes are going to be coming in. And so as we move through harvest, daily it's going out in the vineyards, looking at the fruit and its progression as it's ripening, monitoring that to ensure that we pick it at an optimal ripeness, and we're going to make the best wine with it. And then following that through all of the winemaking procedures, as far as crushing it, taking that juice, settling it, if we're making white wines or rosés, and getting a yeast in it that we want to have to do the fermentation, monitoring the fermentations. We crush somewhere around 35 to 40 different varieties, which kind of turn into maybe 50 different wines in the end that we're producing. So, something like a Syrah, we might make a rosé with some of it. We also may make a sparkling with some of it, and then we make a red table wine with some of it. So we really, in some ways, take maybe one or two varietals and we turn them into several different styles of wine. So, day-to-day stuff is like through the harvest, we're monitoring all the fermentations. Once we get post-harvest, we start to work those up to finish, whether they're going into barrel for aging or whether they're staying in tank because they're a young white, like a say a Pinot Grigio or a Sauvignon Blanc, and we know we're going to be bottling those shortly after Christmas.
Okay.
Going into the new year, and as we go into the new year, we have things that are coming out of barrel that were from previous vintages, reds that like this Zinfandel that we want to get bottled. So those come out of barrel, and we're putting new things into barrel, and it's just kind of a constant of moving wines through the winery and getting them ready to bottle. So on a day-to-day basis, it may be emptying barrels one day and refilling them the next, and then getting those wines cleaned up, filtered, ready to bottle, getting them bottled, and just following it from start to finish. Really.
Yeah. How many bottles do you get out of the harvest here, approximately each year?
Well, everybody asks, a ton of grapes, 2,000 pounds. A grapevine generally produces, when you're looking for quality type of stuff, we try to keep our vines at around 8 to 12 pounds per vine.
Okay.
You can crop them much heavier and get a lot more fruit. You tend to make wines that are maybe a little bit leaner and doesn't have as much complexity, but that 8 to 10 pounds is sort of a magic number. So we take that, but a ton of grapes will generate about 160 to 170 gallons of finished wine, depending if you're making red or white, rosé. There's some variances in there, but take a round number of around 160 gallons per ton of grapes, which that'll generate about 70 cases.
Wow,
so 70 cases is 740 bottles, something like that. So you have that many bottles coming out of a ton of grapes. So we do somewhere around 450 to 600 tons a year.
Okay.
And that's all coming off of our estate vineyards. Everything that we produce here at South Coast is coming off our own vineyards. We don't buy any fruit from out of the area really, and we only work with our own fruit that's coming off our vineyards, which we own and manage. And that's part of our whole sustainability aspect of what we are. We are a certified sustainable winery and vineyard operation, and we take great pride in the fact that we know where our fruit came from, and I could tell you what we did to take care of it as far as any types of sprays or things that were done, to combat mildew or what have you. We try to lean into the organic aspect of it. It's a difficult thing to become certified organic because we do have to deal with some insect pressures here that we've had, and I think it's something that we just really do our best to make the most healthy fruit to create the very best wines.
Yeah, and are the wines also purchased from outside vendors? Is this sold across the country, or is it all exclusively purchased here at the winery? The bottles.
Most of our production, I would say, is sold in Southern California. For sure. We're probably one of the unique properties in that about 50% of our production is sold here on site, and then about another 50% goes out in wholesale, where you can find it at Stater Brothers, local other grocery stores, Barron's, Albertsons, you name it. Costco's. We have a wholesale division that works to get these wines out into the market. So that's something. Going out of state and looking at markets in other parts of the country are rather difficult because of the expense of moving that product, east.
Right.
As you take it to Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, what have you, you're adding freight, and then you're adding another dimension of having to work with a wholesaler that's moving it. So it adds dollars to it, and when you wind up having a bottle of wine that you're trying to sell for say $25, you take it say to Texas, it's going to be $30, or you go to the East Coast, it may be $30, and then you're in a whole nother category of what you're competing up against, and you may be looking at French or Italian wines in that respect, but then it becomes something where the consumer is if they're savvy consumers, they know they have a lot of different options.
Yeah, and in terms of that, what about competitions? So has any of the wine here from South Coast been entered into competitions?
Oh, definitely. It's interesting. The fair system in California was one of the biggest promoters of wine back in the 70s and 80s. When I came here in 1985, the fair system, whether it was Los Angeles County Fair, Orange County Fair, San Diego County Fair, all of these fairs had a wine competition in it. Some of them were international, some of them were more regional, but it was always, a big competition where most of the wineries in the state all participated, because there weren't a lot of wine magazines at that time that were promoting wine consumption. These fairs were what really got the word out about having quality product. Of course, Wine Spectator was actually started down in San Diego. A guy named Bob Morris started that and wound up selling it. But once it went into the big publication, it really changed sort of what the face of the industry was looking at when it came to competitions. But we still enter probably, I would say, a couple of dozen wines that we produce annually into 10 or so different fairs and wine competitions that are in the state. And it's a great way to get validation in respect to where are you in the scheme of your production. This Zinfandel, for instance, would be entered in a category with other Zinfandels from the same vintage, and then you judged against maybe another 30, 40 different Zinfandels that are made in the state, and maybe only 4 or 5 of them may win a gold medal, and maybe another 4 or 5 win a silver, and maybe 3 or 4 others win bronzes, and then the rest don't win anything. So, if you come away from that with, a silver, bronze medal, you feel pretty good. Of course, you win a gold or a best of class or something, it's like I beat out, a number of other wineries and wines to earn that award. And I think we have over 4,000 awards here for the different wines we've done over the last 20 years. And I think that, the biggest things, of course, are the state fair that we compete in, and that's one where most of the wines in the state go into the state fair because it's one of the oldest wine competitions in the state. And when you win over that, and we've won that 5 times, that we've come away as Golden State Winery of the Year, and that is beating out a number of other wineries that obviously have all entered, and it really puts a feather in your cap because it does underscore the fact that what you're producing is quality stuff.
Very much so. What about the international competition as well, John? Because I must ask, so can a South Coast, have they entered in against international, like the French, the Italian wines?
We've entered in competitions in France, and we had a Cabernet for our Carter Estate Winery, which is catty corner here across the street, and our Cabernet was one of the only California cabs that won a gold medal. Now I know, there probably may not have been more than a couple of dozen that were entered, but we still were in that category with a lot of other French, and I don't know if there are any Italians in that. It was mainly a French competition, but again, it makes you feel like you're doing a good job. The validation thing is important, I think, because consumers often gravitate to wines that they know or like like Pinot Grigio. I'll have a glass of Pinot Grigio. And believe me, the variations in that wine are all over the place. So whether it's coming from, California, or it's coming from, Canada, could be coming from Italy, South America. I mean, Pinot Grigio's grown worldwide. And so you wind up having a little bit different take on it. And, it's nice to, have something that when you get a recognized score and a gold medal or something, that then you can say, we're producing quality stuff. And I think that, the consumer then feels assured when they're saying, oh, it's a gold medal wine, or it got a 92, it's something that they're not second guessing, like, well, I like it, I thought it was pretty good, and somebody else is like, oh, that's, absolute.
You've got the validation.
Dishwater. What are you doing drinking that wine? You have something good, So
you've got the validation there. And I must. So as a layperson, then, what makes a wine? Because we often see a bottle of wine that's so expensive. What elevates the value of a bottle of wine? So you go from a $30 to a $150 to a $200, $400, $500. What is that? What is the distinction between that?
Well, it's I got to say, some of it may be ego. Certainly, when it gets into the winery and possibly the owner, you know, they, you know, obviously wealthy billionaire type or millionaire type. They've spent a lot of money. They've planted some little tiny vineyard, and they're only getting maybe 5 or 6 tons off of it. So this is, you know, very limited production. As I say, you know, ton's only going to make 70 cases. So you get 5 tons, you've made 350 cases. Well, you've built this multi-million-dollar facility to process that 5 tons in. How are you going to recoup your, you know, your investment? Well, the only way is to stick a high dollar price on it. Does it mean that wine's really worth $350? No, but the scarcity of it says, well, we only made 300 cases, and you know, there's thousands of people who want to buy this wine because, you know, my name is so-and-so and I'm, you know, a worldwide leader in whatever. So they all want my wine. So yeah, you might carry it off on that as an ego thing. I mean, certainly, you know, there's certain wines in Europe that, again, because of their location, the age of the vineyards, the actual history behind them, they carry a lot of weight, and those become something that, again, scarcity, you know, they're only making maybe a few thousand bottles. So it becomes something that, you know, everybody wants it because it gives you prestige on your wine list. You're say you're a restaurateur and you've got this fancy restaurant. You want to have a, you know, Domaine Romani Conti on the list because it adds to your stature. And if you don't have it on the list, then your Michelin star may not come as you're looking. So, you know, it becomes something that those are things that are realized through, you know, just the trade, and it's like we're going to charge a lot more for it. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily worth it, but you know, it's just, again, it's that perception of scarcity that kind of drive things like that. And you know, for us, because we grow everything and we have our own production in-house, we control a lot of our own costs. So we became very much aware that competition against other wineries in this valley weren't so much that for us. It was more we're competing against the world market because we realize our consumer coming into the winery, they have loads of wine when they leave here that they can go and shop for at, you know, Costco or wine shops, anywhere they go. They have wines on grocery shelves everywhere. So you want to be looking at what you're producing, how much of it, and how it prices out really in that category. I mean, you know, a great Zinfandel is, you know, you can find great ones for $6-7 a bottle, and you can find great ones for $70 or $80 a bottle. So
very true.
Where do you stack up in that? And that's always my thing. And Javier and I both were very much about tasting our wines against what the other competition is to say, look, here's an $80 bottle, here's an $8 bottle. Where are we in the mix? Are we closer to that 70 or are we closer to the 8 or we're somewhere in that, you know, higher, you know, top 15%? Then yeah, it makes sense to say we want to price it for more, but how much of it did we make? Are we going to sell through it in a given time that, you know, we're moving it because we own this vineyard that we're getting our fruit from, and every year we're going to get a new crop. And if we're not moving it, then it's going to start stacking up in the warehouse real quick. So, you know, it becomes something that I think we look at and say, you know, we know what our costs are in producing it, and let's be fair to the consumer and put it out there at a price that, you know, is livable, and we make some profit on it, but more, we're sharing something that we've produced here in-house that we feel very proud about.
And you talked about the equipment, the cost of the equipment, because you said, you mentioned a billionaire would have to invest millions into the equipment to produce this wine. So what does that look like here, the production offices? I mean, is the equipment service on a constant basis? Is it fairly new? Is it, you know, is it replaced regularly? What are the costs of that?
Well, you know, the old adage about how do you make $1 million or how you make a small fortune in the wine industry is start with a large fortune. And so, you know, the owner here, Jim Carter, and his family, they were involved in real estate and commercial development, and they had a lot of money invested in this place. You know, the building of the resort and the restaurant and the winery itself, you know, was probably somewhere 30 million or more. And when you look at what we did in the winery, as far as equipment, yeah, we bought, I would say high quality materials as far as our tanks, our, pumps, bottling line, all of that, we've had it now for 15 plus 20 years going, and we take care of it. We bought it new, so but it's something that you do have to replace certain things over time. But I think that what we've got is maybe not state of the art currently, but when we purchased it, it was state of the art, and certainly our maintenance of it, taking care of it. But yeah, you'll spend, I know for our sparkling production, we spent close to $1 million just on tanks and bottling line for that.
Okay.
And that's something the ROI, the return on investment there is a lot longer than 3 to 5 years. You know, you're looking at something that takes, literally a couple of decades, really.
Yeah.
And so if you don't invest in buying quality equipment, you wind up having to replace it because it wears out sooner or breaks down. And you do have to be cautious about some of that with what you're doing.
Let's talk about a little bit of the evolution of South Coast Winery. So when you came here, was everything as it is now? Did you have the hotel and the resort, the spa?
Oh no, this was a grapefruit orchard, basically. I met Jim Carter in 2001, and I was working at Thornton Winery, and he came by. He had a vineyard up in back up 79 here out in headed towards Awanga. It was not too far out. It was up in the mountains though. Okay. And he kept wanting me to buy fruit, and I was like, Jim, I've got contracts already, and we're buying fruit from other vineyards. But he was adamant about wanting me to see the vineyard, and when I went up and saw it, I recognized a very quality establishment as far as what he's put in that vineyard. And then he had made the decision, if he couldn't sell his grapes like he wanted, he was going to do it himself. Okay. And so he had the idea that I'm going to build a winery, and I'm going to do an all-encompassing hotel, resort, and make it where people come and they stay, and then they have our wines on site, and it's all going to be big happy thing. So when I started working for him in 2003, we had just really broken ground here, and he had built the first building, which was the winery, and we had our tanks in, and as we started harvest that first year, he was continuing construction of this. And I think the resort and the hotel and everything, all of that kind of finished up about 10 years later. Okay. Really. I mean, it was the stage. I know the restaurant didn't open until about 2008. And then it was afterwards he built the tower for the hotel. So it's been an ongoing kind of project. And, he's in Texas doing another one. We have a winery down in Johnson City called Carter Creek, which is very similar to South Coast Winery as far as having a hotel, has a restaurant, and we have a brewery there actually.
And you're the master winemaker over there as well,
I
correct?
do the wines for Carter Creek, I do. And don't do the beer though. We have a brewmaster who's very talented, and he does a great job with the beers there. And I think Jim's idea again was, Texas, people are going to come, but the men are probably going to want to drink beer, but the women are going to want to drink wine. And he goes, I'm going to have both. And what do you think? It's like, I think you're shooting fish in a barrel, Jim. I mean, it's going to be a win-win. Yeah. And so far, it's unfortunately, we opened like right smack dab when the pandemic started in March of 2020, and we closed quickly thereafter and had to, open and close as we, the whole industry had starts and stops. But, we're now, on solid ground, and I feel like it's a very viable place back there. And it's located in the Texas Hill Country, which is where all the wine's being produced in Texas for the most part. Yeah. So it sounds wonderful. I mean, obviously, this is a fantastic site that we have here. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's grown exponentially, obviously, in the past 10, 15 years. With the addition of the restaurant, you've got the spa here. We've got weddings that can be had here. Oh, yeah. You've got the hotel, the little, what else is there here? Am I missing something, John? Is there any other amenities here? The spa, the hotel. Yeah, no, the restaurant, we've just a new chef here that is doing great stuff. I think, the culinary aspects of what Temecula has to offer. And, It's interesting. When I started here in '85, Culbertson was the third winery in the state to have a restaurant. The other two, one was Winty and one was Domaine Chandon.
Okay.
There were only 3 wineries with restaurants on site, and we were the third one.
Okay.
And now it seems like you come to Temecula and pretty much every winery has a restaurant. And you go to other wine regions and it's becoming more and more synonymous that they have, a restaurant on site with their. And it enables you to do better things with banquet events for sure, because everybody wants to, come and have a big, wedding or something at a winery, and it just makes for a better experience, I believe.
Well, experiences are certainly made here, that's for sure. I've personally visited here in the past with my wife, and it's a beautiful location. Beautiful staff. Now, going back as well, I want to go back to a little bit of the wine production there. You mentioned the vineyards are here, so from picking the grapes, that takes place, everything is in-house. So John, I must ask you, have you ever picked grapes?
Well, I have, I've picked and cut my hands too picking. It's something that, you're trying to go fast and you've got clippers or a knife and you invariably slip and cut yourself. But I think that it's hard work. It's hot often. I mean, we try to pick our stuff early in the mornings, like before we have lights that we run on our tractors, so we can actually pick in the dark. But we have overhead lights, so it's something that enables us to bring the fruit in cooler and not have to worry about the hot, the fruit being hot coming in, because requires more refrigeration, et cetera, and processing, and it's better for the fruit to harvest it cool. And obviously it's better for the crew. They're not out in the hot sun.
Right.
It's a little dark, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's better to work in the dark than the heat. And we are experiencing quite the heat wave right now. So, and how does that affect the crop? If we have scorching temperatures like we have, this is record-breaking this year, I believe. How does that affect the crop? Does it?
It can. The biggest aspect is for grapes, they're very sensitive to when they bloom.
Okay.
They are self-pollinating, so you don't really need other influences to help it pollinate, but they are the Cinderella of the fruit industry when it comes to, or I should say the Goldilocks of the fruit industry, when it comes to everything needing to be just right. It can't be too hot, can't be too cold, can't be too dry, can't be too windy, can't be too wet, because they just don't set, and you'll get poor set, and you'll wind up with clusters that are stringy or not filled out. So, when we had bloom this year, we had some damp conditions. It was misty, rainy mornings a little bit. This was still in May, but it was enough it caused us some impact up at Wild Horse Peak. Some of our Bordeaux varieties did not set well. They have very, long kind of stringy clusters with, they'll be light, the fruit will have very low bunch weights. So yields will be a little bit lower on that, but when it's something that you get into weather like this, hopefully your vines have got a fairly good canopy on them at this point. We do some shoot and leaf removal to help open the canopy up for airflow to help fight mildew pressures that we have this weather. With the humidity, you wind up having powdery mildew becoming more of an issue, and so we treat that with a organic sulfur compound that helps fight that. But you can only do so much before the mildew will take over sometimes. And so it's something where the heat, the worst thing you worry about are the vines not having enough water to where they can pull it up fast enough to stay hydrated, so you don't have scorching of the leaves and the fruit itself. So, the vines can take heat. We had one summer, I'm going to say 21 maybe it was, that we got up, we had like 115 degrees here in early June. And stuff that was close to any pavement or hard packed soil road stuff, it really took a beating, and we had a lot of stuff that got scorched, and we lost some fruit that year due to the heat. So it can get too hot, but generally speaking, the vines can weather that.
Okay, all right, good to know. And then in terms of a wine, How does someone distinguish what is a good quality wine? I wanted to ask that. For the layperson, somebody, what characteristics would you be looking for in a great wine?
Well, wine is an interesting beverage because it's always compared food-wise to something else. You talk about, like with this Zinfandel, there's a plummy note, there's a berry note, there's a certain amount of spice that kind of comes from the fruit and from the barrel aging.
Okay.
And so, plums, berry, spice, none of that is Zen,
Right.
Zinfandel. You don't describe it as being zenny. It's got all these other aspects to it. And with any wine, really, the descriptors are other food experiences. So you could talk about Sauvignon Blanc, and it's got passion fruit and gooseberries and bell pepper notes, and all of that are things that maybe as a layperson you recognize. And maybe you say, I don't like bell peppers. I don't enjoy, some sort of green peppery note. So sometimes some wines may have an aromatic profile or flavor profile that don't necessarily jam with, your food likes and dislikes. Like maybe you hate strawberries.
Okay.
So you get say a Sangiovese that's got a lot of big strawberry notes in it or something, and it may be off-putting because that's kind of what it reminds you. Like you smell it and you go, oh, it smells like strawberry jam, and I don't like strawberries.
Got it.
But it's something then that comes back around that you maybe you learn to love it, or you find an intrigue in it. And so I think when people talk about wines and they say, you look at the legs and you see all these little ribbons that kind of come down, that's just really significant of there's alcohol in this one. And so anything's going to give you that appearance if it's got alcohol in it. You can swirl a glass of whiskey and see the legs fall. It does say kind of, it can be higher in alcohol and you see them fall faster, but it doesn't speak to the quality of the product at all.
Okay.
So, density of color and, when you pick it up and smell it, do you really get something? Are you smelling any fruit, or is it just kind of like a bland, nothingness, So I think we all use these descriptors, and I can say, oh yeah, do you smell that? Do you get a little cinnamon? You get a little chocolate note.
Yep.
There's something there, and it's like, power of suggestion is of course very powerful when it comes to that. But I do find that when I talk about a wine with somebody and say, wow, can you smell this in it? And it's like, well, yeah, I do get a note of that, and then you can pull it out of them. Well, is that strawberry, is it fresh, or has it been squashed, or is it, been cooked? Is it overripe? Did it sit in the sun too long? Was it green? And then it kind of becomes something that, you start using more of these experiences that you have. So, it's like you got to use your words, when you're talking about wine. But I do think that good wines are something that it's very easily recognized when you smell it. It's like, oh wow, I smell bananas, and it's like, you should get that maybe if you're drinking Pinot Grigio or you're getting, fresh pears, or something in that respect. It's something that, it's easily smelled, and, it's not like we're adding these fruits to the wine, but it's part of that grape. It's part of how the yeast have turned that juice into wine, and there's certain compounds the yeast produce from other compounds that are present in the juice. They've complexed it and made these esters that give it those aromatic things that then remind us of other experiences.
Remind us and take us there. You mentioned something at the beginning of the interview, John, about lifestyle, which piqued my interest, about the lifestyle of wine and pairing it with a good meal. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you meant by that, the lifestyle?
Well, I think that it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. We're all working for the almighty dollar type of thing, trying to make ends meet. And of course, we've all gotten away from a certain agrarian aspect of what, we as a society, as a species, we came from the earth. We had to tend vegetables, tend crops. We did farm more than we do now. And I think it's easy to go to the grocery store and pick up, whatever you're going to have for dinner, and then you don't really know how did he get there.
Right.
If you've never had a vegetable garden yourself, or maybe you've never raised chickens and had fresh eggs, or even had to slaughter a chicken because you wanted to have a roast chicken dinner. But when you have a connection to food like that in a way, then you really have a more of an appreciation. And when you look at wine, I think everybody sees it as a very mysterious beverage. It's like, how did it suddenly turn from berries into this magical juice that we all want to drink? But in the end, I think the lifestyle aspect is when you do take a minute, and whatever it is you do for your living and in life, you take a break and you're enjoying family, you're with friends, and whatever you do as food, you're breaking bread with others, and wine adds a dimension to that. Certainly when you pair it, a Zinfandel like this, pairs wonderfully with lamb. You can have just cheese. You can have very simple things. It doesn't have to be a Michelin star type of an experience, but it adds to that overall experience, I think. And when you look at the lifestyle of for me, I'm still very much one foot in the vineyard and doing, the farming aspects, and then the others in the winery making it. And then, I step out and I go to a fancy restaurant and do a winemaker dinner and, get to share what we've done with, the people that are there. But obviously the chef may have prepared a fabulous meal. And it's all centered around 4 or 5 different wines that we do. And I think that that's something that, that is all about, that lifestyle. It's like I can be out on the farm, I can be in the dirt, I can be doing that, and then I'm in the, the crafty, creating aspect of making it and enjoying seeing it actually evolve from, a juice to a finished product, and, the part of putting it in the bottle, that's the last step where everything's got to be right, such that when you walk away from that bottle, somebody comes along and buys it, they're going to have the experience you had intended for them to have with how it tastes and how it smells. So I think that, when you talk about the lifestyle, it's just, it's such a great, for me, still being able to kind of be on the farm in my mind. I grew up with parents who, were farmers, and it was just something that, wine can be very snooty. You get to that where that $1,000 a bottle, and we're ooh la la, and it's something that it's still though it's very much a peasant type of beverage. It can be. It just very much you and I sharing a glass right here. It's not like we have to be very highbrow about it. It's just a lovely thing to have.
Yeah, and obviously, this setting in particular, as I said, South Coast Winery, a beautiful wine country here in Temecula, Southern California, is truly one of the most, exquisite locations. Everything here from a spa to a restaurant to a hotel. You can have weddings here, other get-togethers, other festivities, and of course, taste the beautifully produced wine that is actually produced here locally by our master winemaker here, John McPherson. Well, John, it's been an absolute pleasure sitting with you here today, learning a little bit more about you and about South Coast Winery. And we hope that you all come to visit the winery and indulge here. So I'll say to you, I'll say cheers.
Cheers to
John.
You. Thank you.
And cheers to all our viewers.
Cheers,
Until next
everyone.
time.